Marty, why can we never get a trip down to all these lovely places like Kinsale? Come on now, come on! I'm stuck in my villa here in Florida again.
Aye, terrible. Reason we can't get down, it's because it's a bloody long way away from people. People think Ireland's this tiny little place. It's about 5.5 hours for me to get down to Kinsale, all the way from up on the north coast. But thanks to the wonderful technology, we don't have to travel down. We can get Sam from Black's Brewery and Distillery. Have to get that correct.
Yeah.
Down in Kinsale, he can come to us. Sam, how are you, my friend? All good?
All good. Yeah, busy now. Christmas is looming, so it's all gone. Everything's gone a bit petong at this time of year, trying to get everything out and everything ready. But yeah, we've had an interesting week. We're delighted to be launching our own first releases of our own whiskey this week. We have a launch event on Thursday. So yep, we're delighted to finally have our own liquid in bottles and out available to the public.
It is, and it's the first flight. We'll talk about that in a little bit because that's kind of why I wanted to get caught up with you. Now, for anyone who doesn't know about Blacks, yours is a bit of a strange story, really. Sort of because you don't, it was kind of a hobby that you just took to the extreme, wasn't it? Is that be true enough?
Yeah, so I suppose it all started way back when my wife, Maud, who works with me in the business now, she bought me a homebrewing kit for Valentine's Day one year. And it was a very basic affair, kind of a plastic bucket and, almost like making soup. But I just really enjoyed it. I made great beer from the start, and I never made a bad beer. That's what I used
You must
to
be
say.
the only person that's ever said that, because most people create great laxatives to start with.
No, I got really into the whole kind of science of it and improving the flavour and everything. And this was a time when in Ireland there wasn't really any. There was a tiny bit of craft beer, maybe O'Hara's and a couple of others, but it was very much not everywhere mainstream. And trying to get a kind of a hoppy IPA style beer, there was probably Sierra Nevada. That was the only one that was, and it was just one flavor of Sierra Nevada. Whereas if you look now, it's crazy the amount of choice we have. So it was kind of make your own or go without, So that kind of got me going. And then obviously that got more serious with more and more serious equipment. And like most brewers, you kind of have this dream to open a brewery one day. And for me, that came around in 2013. So what were we, 11 years ago now? Started in our first location with a 2,000 litre brew kit, brewing a couple of times a week. And then in 2015, we added our first still, which was a hybrid column still for making gin. And at that time, getting the distillation license was quite tricky at that time. You had to kind of make a special case for having a still that was smaller. Our first still was only 500 litre capacity.
Yeah.
And getting whiskey that was pre-GI, so you could make a few bits. Like we did make poutine at the start, and then the GI kind of came in, and then you had to have at least 2 stills to make Irish whiskey, and it had to be copper still and all the other great and wonderful things that were in the GI. So that kind of put us back a little bit then until 2020 or 2019 when we purchased our 2 copper pot stills and started making whiskey on those then. And then just this year, only about 3 weeks ago, we've got a 3rd pot still in as well, which is the new big one, which is a 5,000 litre capacity wash still. Okay. So we kind of we have 5 stills at the moment on the premises. We have the hybrid column still, we have a gin still, which is also a copper still. And then we have 3 dedicated whiskey stills. So it means we can make rum, gin, whiskey all at once without a lot of complications with cleaning and all this kind of stuff. So
you seem to be on this arc, start beer, then there's gin, all the way up, and now you've got up to whiskey. There's that sort of hierarchy of if you like, of different beverages.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it was always the dream to push it as far as we could in terms of getting to whiskey, which I suppose is kind of the pinnacle of distilling in Ireland at the moment. It's been a hard slog because of the time it takes, obviously, with whiskey. Yeah. So the liquid we're releasing this week, we laid down December 2020, so it's 4 years ago. So it's we've got a lot of stuff in casks, so it's great to be able to start opening them up and picking out what we want to release and releasing things as they're ready to go.
Now, I know I know certainly in the north there's a quite a difficult legal requirement for being able to have a brewery and a distillery under one roof. Is that the same down south? Is that the same in the Republic?
It's 2 licenses, and we actually have a bar here on the premises as well. So we operate 3 licenses of revenue. But it's the same bond, so that's one less thing to worry about. And then we have obviously dedicated tanks for different things, and work streams for different things. It's the same brew house, which is kind of like the engine, where the malted barley goes in and becomes wash or becomes beer. That's the same. And then after that, they've kind of got different streams through different tanks. So I mean, it's good for it gives us a lot of crossovers and synergies between the 2 sides of the business in terms of staffing and energy use and equipment use, insurance and things like that. So obviously it's good to have, we think it's good to have both things together on one site. And it gives you a chance to play around with beer and whiskey casks and whiskey and beer casks and things like that too,
You certainly look to be very innovative with some of the products you have. I mean, these just appeal to me. These look very festive. Rum up, apple, pineapple and coconut. And the old favorite up here, which is Yellow Man Honeycomb.
Yeah, the honeycombs actually is the most favorite rum up. That's the new product. It's only really launched in the last maybe 6-8 weeks. It's going out into trade a little bit, but the honeycomb is outstripping sales of the other 2 at the moment, and it just has this lovely, almost like Maltesery kind of, really kind of comforting, reminds you of being a child, kind of sweetie kind of thing.
Right.
And it just goes really well, just with Coke or in any kind of cocktail. So, the rums are fun. There's not a lot of people doing rum in Ireland. We've been doing it since 2014, 15, when we got the first still. We started making rum. So we've been developing it over the years. We have 5 different rums at the moment, and we have some kind of very old extra specials and stuff that is in cask that will come out
Wow.
sooner rather than later as well,
You guys must be taking pretty much every alcoholic beverage box, right? Beer, IPAs, lager, blah blah blah, rum, poaching, now whiskey, etc. You must Let's look through a book. Let's see what other ones are. Oh right, we'll do one of these.
Yeah, we do, and we have stuff that we do maybe white label for other people, and we have products that are in development that are kind of like ready to go, but you can't release too much at once. It becomes logistically really difficult, and you kind of overwhelm your distributors as well, with too many options. So so
you guys must love paperwork.
Yeah, not so much. The month end can be quite kind of complicated, trying to figure out where everything's gone and what was this and what was that. And
filling stuff in to keep you legally right, plus keeping logistics of where everything is. We'll do a rum up bottle, blah blah blah. It must be quite complicated.
Different bottle types is challenging, because you're trying to make sure you have enough of each bottle and each stopper and each label and everything as well, and the boxes and everything's different. But it's nice to have a few different faces and a few different looks and feels to the products that we have as well. So it's not just one blanket look across the board. Now,
what is your background? Do you have a background in alcohol or drinks companies or anything like that?
No. So
nothing at all.
Just started with the home brewing and got more serious about it, and then did some courses in brewing and distilling in advance of opening the business, and that's it really. Nothing really on that side. I was doing like medical device engineering, kind of paperwork engineering to a certain extent. So familiar with lots of paperwork, legislation, and ISO audits, and jumping through hoops and lots of paperwork, which is one whole side of it. And then just kind of being handy and mechanically minded is the other side of it. Especially when you're starting out and your equipment's kind of, maybe not the best equipment in the world, it's what you can afford, and things break on a regular basis. Now we have newer, shinier equipment, but things still break on a regular basis. I mean, you're putting stuff under a lot of pressure, a lot of heat and pressure and steam and things like that. So Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose the background, it's more really the place I am in my head and the passion that I have for the industry and the products that kind of keeps me driving forwards with it.
Yeah. I mean, it must take a fair bit of chutzpah, I suppose, is maybe the word, to do this full time. You know, it's a gamble. I mean, let's be honest, it is a gamble.
It definitely was a gamble, but I mean, we're 11 years in business now.
Yeah.
We have just last year built the place we're in at the moment, our new facility, and it's a place that we own. We're not renting it from somebody else. We've got great stability on. We can do things that we know will be here forever. And obviously adding the bar and the visitor experience and everything this year has been a challenge because it's all new. I've never run a pub. I've only ever worked in beer festivals and bars and things like that.
Yeah.
Pubs maybe, but not to run one. So it's all a challenge, but it's I suppose everything's moving so fast, you don't really have time to sit back and worry too much.
No time to sit back and put the feet up. Now, here's a quick question: the relationship between brewing beer and distilling. Well, you've real hands-on knowledge of both of these. Now, making your wash and stuff is it much different making a wash for a whiskey than it is for making a beer, or is it basically the same, just with little tweaks? Or what way would you describe that?
So the start of the process is the same. So if we're making single malt wash versus an IPA, we'd mill the grain and we'd mill it to about the same consistency. That goes into the first step of the process. We add the hot water. We might add an enzyme if we were making a whiskey wash because we're trying to get more fermentability.
Yeah.
Where we wouldn't if we're making a beer. And then the amount of water, the ratio of water to grain in the mash could be a little bit different between beer and whiskey, but it's the same physical tank in the brew house and it's the same duration of time. And then if it's going to wash, I suppose that'll be the first brew of the day, we'll say. If that's going to wash, then it just gets aerated with oxygen. It goes over into the fermenter and we pitch yeast, Going to beer, it gets boiled to sterilize it, and we add hops. And then the hops give the bitterness and kind of balance the sweetness of the beer. And then it goes through another whirlpool step where we add more hops and we try and clarify the wort a little bit more before it goes to the fermenter. But then it's oxygenated, goes to the fermenter, we pitch yeast. And then the
different types of yeast.
Yeah, well, we use with the whiskey, we've got a lot of different recipes, and some of them would be recipes that play with different yeasts. So it could be the classic distiller's yeast. It could be a combination of brewer's yeast and distiller's yeast. It could be a champagne yeast or a wine yeast combined with the distiller's yeast. So we've got lots of different things in cask coming through, trying to play with some of those elements and see how things are. With the beers, depending on the beer, it could be different. A stout recipe could have a different yeast to an IPA, or a hazy beer would have a different yeast to a clear beer, or a lager is a completely different yeast.
Yeah.
So it's not super different. It's a bit of a longer day with brewing because you're boiling. So you have your 60 minutes or 90 minutes of boiling. So we'd normally do 2 or 3 beer runs in the day, whereas with the distilling, it's a bit quicker, and we can do more runs in one day. And what we tend to do is make wash for distillation, maybe for a week or 2 weeks, and then fill up all our tanks, and then get on with making beer, and be distilling at the same time with the wash that we made previously.
You sound like you're a very, very, very busy man. Where do you find the time to get the tours around the place?
Well, that's not my job. Someone else does the tours. So the tours, they kind of we have a walkway. You can probably see it here.
Yeah.
So the public comes in, they come into the bar where I'm sitting at the moment, and then they go through the process with the tour guide, and they explain kind of the history of the building, the history of Blacks, and what we've been doing for the last 11 years. And then they talk through the brewing process, the distilling process, and then there's actually a tasting room at the end where you get to have a taste of the products.
Now, you because I'm thinking if you're going to start doing the talk through everything you do, you'd be there for how long does the tour last? About 3 hours because we do the beer, we do the rum.
There's one tour guide that could make it a 3-hour tour for sure.
Well, I know tour guides that can make them 3 hours. Not there. No,
sometimes we have a big group in and we want them to get into the bar and we're like, make this a quick one, you know, and then an hour later you're like, where is he? He's only halfway up the ramp. What we do is it's the same tour essentially, but then when you get to the tasting room, you can pick if you want to do a beer tasting, a rum tasting, a whiskey tasting, a gin, or a combination of different things, which is good if you're traveling with 3 or 4 people and one person's really into rum, one person's into whiskey, you know, so you can come as a group, do the tour together, and then have your different tasting part. In the shop.
I mean that having that big a selection of stuff that you've actually made, that is.
I mean the bar we have
real separate tasting flight.
The bar here is fully stocked. We only have we only buy in wine and cider from a company that we know. So everything else we make ourselves. Yeah,
and now you are down in Kinsale. It is a stunning little place. I mean, it's not very big for anyone who hasn't been to Kinsale. It's like a seaside town with all these beautiful painted, pastel coloured houses. When was I down there? April. It is a beautiful little part of the world. But again, it's down in that southwest area where the weather's coming in off the Atlantic. Do you think you benefit from that?
In terms of maturation, probably. In terms of sitting outside and having a beer, probably not. We had a challenging summer last year, weather-wise. So we actually put up a new kind of glass box essentially outside on our terrace that went up a couple of weeks ago, which should keep the wind off and the rain off, because we couldn't really even book events because 2 days out they would say, oh, there's actually another storm coming,
another one.
Enjoy the weather. I mean, it's good for a process. We have like a fairly consistent wind here, which means that our cooling tower, which recirculates the water through the stills, the cooling tower through the columns on the stills, works really efficiently here because there's always this kind of nice breeze that's cooling the water as it flows through the tower. So that's working great. And we're in we're right by the water. So we're just kind of overlooking, it'd be the Bandon estuary as the river comes into Kinsale harbour. So very picturesque location. And nothing else around really. There's no housing developments or anywhere too close to here. So we're pretty peaceful.
It's a beautiful little place, it really is. I was down in Cork and then I took a jaunt down to Kinsale for a bite of something to eat. I can't remember the name of the place I ate in, but it was rather nice. I remember being very impressed. Now, getting onto your whiskey, because you have your first flight, your logo's an eagle.
Yeah, it's a crow, actually.
A crow, sorry.
Yeah, it depends where you're from. If you're selling into Saudi Arabia, it's always an eagle.
Why a crow?
I suppose my wife's maiden name is Crowley, so she's from Clonakilty up the road, so she's Crowley or Crowley, but Crowley really where they come from. So it was just a nice way to kind of integrate a little bit of her story into the Black's name as well, which is obviously my surname.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to come up with a logo when you're starting. You kind of need something to go with.
Of course. Now, you guys are the first legal whiskey made in Kinsale.
Sure. Yeah. First whiskey distilled here. Yeah.
And you have 2 bottles out. So you've done a launch of your single malt and your pot still. Now, the single malt is port cask and the pot still is Oloroso. Pot still is Oloroso.
That's it. So the pot still, I have a bottle here. You can probably see pictures of it. So, so they're both distilled within a couple of weeks of each other. They were both, so I think, probably 2 weeks difference between them, both December 2020. When we were picking what we wanted to do for our first release, we were kind of saying, do we want to be like more pot still or do you want to be more single malt? So we pulled a load of casks. We actually had a load of guys in from the Cork Whisky Society to do a tasting here in the summer, and they got to try samples of a bunch of different things. These 2 really stood out as the favourites. In the end, we decided, look, we'll just go with both and release the two of them together as a nice kind of a twin pair. So one kind of silver, one kind of coppery gold, a single malt and a pot still, and then the two different casks. The port cask really fantastic with the single malt whiskey and the Oloroso sherry. I mean, and it's 100%. It's not a finish, It's been there from the start, so you can see the color is amazing on them as well, And I mean, what we've always done since we've started is we filled expensive casks with expensive whiskey. So we have lots of interesting different casks from around the world with single malt, and then pot still, and a few different recipes, as I said, with a few different tweaks and changes. So we'll have a lot of variety of things coming down the road, and a lot of full cask finishes in unusual, more expensive types of casks.
Yeah. Now going forward, because I mean, first releases are, I say this all the time. First releases are your sort of, your firstborn. They're the statement pieces, and then after that, your second releases are actually the ones that people buy more to drink. The first release, people like to have them and set them up. I certainly like having first releases as a collectible.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
And that's just the way of the world. But your second releases, are you going to be doing blends going forward, or are you going to stick to doing like single cask releases because on scale or whatever? What way do you see yourself going forward?
Yeah, I mean, well, we already, we have some whiskey products in the market that are sourced whiskey blends. We don't have grain distillation here, so we'll always be buying grain in for any blends that we do want to do.
Yeah.
I suppose we have quite a lot of interesting single casks, or maybe two or three of a cask that we would like to see how they develop. And I have probably the next couple of releases lined up, and there'll be kind of small batch, maybe 1-2 casks of something interesting. Whether it comes out at 44% or 43% or cask strength, we'll figure that out when we get into kind of tasting and figuring out the exactly what we want to put out there. The whiskies that we have in our Maverick range currently, our own liquid will start to replace malt that we were buying from other places into those. So we'll only be bringing in the grain element, which is normal enough for a distillery like us.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's a bit of figuring out to do. It's been kind of what do we do? What's next? It's kind of a bit of brainstorm, and you can say, oh yeah, let's do a bourbon, single malt, and then you go and pull a cask, and you're like, probably do another 3 months. So figure out a little bit as you go as well, And then it's got really complicated as well with approvals on labels and things that can take months and months and months now. So you can't be quite as dynamic as you'd like to be, certainly as well,
Yeah. No, well, I mean, regulations, red tape. I mean, you guys seem to enjoy it. the different things you're doing. Now, your pot still. I know people don't like to give away recipes, but is it a high unmalted content, because that has a huge
huge
effect.
Yeah, it's about it's just under 30%. So, and we have oats, wheat, rye, more oats than wheat, more wheat than rye. So that's kind of the breakdown. That's our kind of P1 recipe.
Okay.
And then we have ones that are completely outside the rules on the GI in terms of the percentages. So there'd be Irish whiskey. They couldn't be sold as pot still under the current rules. We have some really weird and wonderful ones that are based around brewing recipes. So we have one that we call Choc Pot, which is like a stout recipe that we use for making a stout beer, which is a World's End is the name of the beer. It's a big imperial chocolate stout. And that's phenomenal stuff. Again, outside of the GI. But amazing new make, like deliciously like chocolate milk new make, and then we're putting it into casks that'll give a really good, like an stout cask that'll give a really good finished product. So they're a bit young because we were doing them maybe 2 years ago, even more like 2 years ago. So they've still got at least a year to go.
Yeah.
So they could be in the next couple of years. We'll see some of those coming out. But yeah, there's been some, like when we're pulling cast samples, there's some really interesting and exciting stuff coming true, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with all you guys doing all of this different stuff, I mean, you do have a fairly big palette that you can paint with, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there is so many things you can do, and because I suppose we have a lot of different specialty malts on site anyway for making beer. You can, look at the palette and say, well, there's a little bit of this left, there's a little bit of that left. Let's do, a couple of runs and a couple of distillations.
Run it through the still and see how we got on.
And see what it's like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, loads of stuff has been happy accidents. You know, things that have. Just take a chance and see what happens. You know.
Yeah. Well, you can kind of figure out in your head what the ingredients are going to do to the wash.
Yeah.
And if the wash tastes really good, it's very hard for the new egg not to taste really good as well.
Yeah.
You know. And then if the new egg tastes good, the whiskey should taste good. So that's kind of our philosophy on we never really, if something doesn't taste good, it doesn't get as far as a cask, you know.
Well, I think the thing about it is that philosophy, if you do everything right, you do everything as best you can, it can't really go wrong, you know. I mean, you'll always
it can do if the cask leak.
Well, that's a slightly separate. That's a physical impediment. No, but I mean, the thing is, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day, and I said to them, if you're making a whiskey right, about a quarter of the people that try it should probably go, I don't really like that, which tells you that it's got loads of flavour. Because if it's got loads of flavour, certain people just won't like it.
Not everybody likes everything all the time.
Not everybody likes everything.
Yeah,
so if a lot of the big guys now seem to be going down we'll just keep it as anemic as possible, and that way people can't get offended and may appeal to everybody. What they seem to not be getting is that, you're not going to offend anybody, but the actual whiskey guys, the spirit guys, are kind of going, that's nowhere near as good as it used to be. And you're sort of putting them all off.
And simplified.
Yeah, just simplify it, make it as bland as possible, and that way you don't offend anybody. So a good whiskey, about a quarter of the people that taste it should be going, nah, I'm not really sure about that, because it has plenty of flavour, and that should put people off. And majority of people like it, and some people just go, no, I preferred that one to that one. And other guys go, no, I like that one to that one, and that tells me that you're putting flavour into it,
No, I definitely agree with that. And I suppose we're in the same industry as the big guys, but we're kind of at a very different end of the same industry.
Exactly.
We don't need everybody to like things we do because we could never make enough for everybody anyway. So,
but that's it. That's to me. That's if you can do it where you a quarter of the people aren't sure about it or don't particularly like it, you're telling you that you're doing something right, because you're putting enough flavour in it that you do turn some people off, Now, not talking about putting people off, I want to talk quickly about your first flight, because it's a 2-set combination. It's available on your website for pre-order, isn't it? Pre-order?
It's available for it's pre-order. We have stuff shipping. Yeah, so it's like Thursday is the launch party. We have an event on here in Fishy in Kinsale, a tasting event, and then bottles will start shipping. We're kind of using a different fulfillment crowd, but they'll start sending them out Thursday. So people should have them by Friday. Friday if you order now.
Excellent.
Days, so
I have my orders are in.
Very good.
Oh yeah. I'm getting them shipped to a friend's house in Dublin, because you don't send up to the UK. You don't send up north or across the water, do you?
No, that's something that we struggle with a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I know we were using another crowd previously to kind of do that for some of our products, but they kind of have to have them in their stock, and then they go out from their stock.
Yeah.
So it might be that the anyone that's looking for it internationally, that these will appear in another store, Irish Malts or one of those stores that can do shipping to the US, Europe, and the UK and Northern Ireland as well. So I suppose, yeah, we don't really have a technical ability to do it. I'm sure we can do it. I just haven't been able to figure it out.
I'm sure there's some.
With your paperwork expertise, I'm sure you will eventually.
Yeah, it's evading my knowledge somehow. But
Now, how many bottles is there in the first flight collection?
so 560 was the total yield for both of them, and we're releasing 400, and we're going to keep some back for our own things.
Yeah,
and we want to have some stock for tours, for tastings in tours. Throughout the summer next year as well. So they're numbered, one of 560 or two of 560 or whatever number you get. There'll be we're going to sell 400 out.
So the 400 released, they are available to buy now. You'll be getting, if you buy them now, you get them before Christmas.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Long before Christmas. So there you go. Get on the first flight. I'm really looking forward to getting my bottles up here. And
they're available individually or as the pack. They're a little bit cheaper if you buy the two together.
Yeah.
And you get like a kind of collector's kind of copper coaster thing as well. The reason we put the singles up is because some people, we have a cask club. Obviously, we have like a founders club with casks.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people have a sherry cask or they have a port cask, and they're like, I really want to know what it tastes like because mine will be ready in a year or 2 years or 3 years time.
Yeah.
So, we said, we'll make them available as individuals and as a kind of a pack together as well.
Yeah.
So, but from the sales, the pre-orders I've seen coming in, it's mostly just people are mostly buying the packs anyway.
Yeah, I think people just like. I mean, I like collecting the first release bottles. That's the ones I really like to get because they are sort of people planting their flag. This is our own spirit. What's it like, and so on. And
definitely.
It's a nice thing. It's a nice thing.
And the boxes came in. The boxes that we had in those photos weren't the final boxes. So we got the final boxes in. They have like a 3D kind of effect on the.
Oh, right, like hologram type thing.
I like that.
It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's embossed or debossed kind of effect on the bird. The one that I only had samples for those photos, but anyway, I said I'll put them up.
Yeah, put them up. Sam, it's great talking to you, buddy. I wish you all the success in the world, and I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on my bottles as the friends picking them up for me, so I'll get them up hopefully before Christmas. Fingers crossed.
Oh, you definitely, yeah, I'm sure.
Oh no, but I have to go to get them. I have to nip to get them, but I'm sure that's not the biggest thing in the world. But other than that, wish you all the best. If we ever get a wee run down to Kinsale, Justin, I'll let you take me into the bar and we can go for something to eat.
Can I stay over? It's a long way to go. It's a long way to go one day.
We'll have to at some point.
Loads of accommodation in Kinsale, but nothing at the distillery.
All right. Okay.
That's a sleeping bag then, Justin. That's a sleeping bag for you.
Kept in the car. All right.
Sam, great talking to you, buddy, and all the best. And take care. Catch up with you again soon.
Perfect. Thanks very much, guys. It's been a pleasure.